Hello and welcome back. It's me and Quacke retaking the week, and it's been one hell of a week, a crazy week, absolute blast, you could even say. Before we get into any details, let's get the formalities out of the way. Quack, it's been a week. How have you been?
I've been doing okay. It's been one hell of a week of CS. Yeah, two events mainly to keep an eye on, and it was ESL Challenger Jonkoping, which is a less notable one, and
Yeah,
Blast Fall Final in Copenhagen. Yep.
yeah, that's a pretty big one, and I think that's what we're going to launch straight into. Although first, quickly, I do want to address this is coming out on Monday, and we are a day delayed compared to when we usually are recording this show. And I like to do this show with the bright morning light flooding into the room, so it's not my usual dark, lonely room as it looks like on most recordings. But unfortunately, logistically, that was not possible this week. So here we are on a Monday, and for once, we actually know who won the events. There's no thin air predictions to make. We can't discuss games that are up and coming, at least for us. Instead, we actually have a result. Last Premier Full Final, we have a win for Vitality. The FaZe streak, it had to come to an end. Everyone thought it would end simply when the roster died. Instead, it seems they've run out of steam here against a revitalized Vitality with an actually very impactful Zywoo, which is great to see after, well, a one LAN kind of dip. And a great fifth in Mezzi, who really found not necessarily too many crazy maps, but certainly found his place on this team. He was pretty easy to slot in, and the team seemed pretty comfortable playing with him. Quacker, did you manage to catch any of their matches?
I did not know. I didn't. I couldn't catch the final. I watched the semifinal phase versus Col,
Oh,
and I watched. Yeah. Uh, Another good game. I watched a bit of the NIP game, singular, the first one. I didn't catch Vitality, unfortunately.
okay. I mean, that's fine. They'll be probably playing very much the same way in the coming events. One thing that was interesting was it was a massive performance from Flamesy in the final. I think most people were expecting the usual suspects to show up, not him to absolutely pop off. I mean, he's not had a bad event, really, by any means. It's just he's not going to be the player you're relying on to put up these sorts of performances, but he fragged his boots off, really helped them get through what should have been on paper a really tough series. So that was great to see. Always nice to see that he's actually continuing to mesh and get better and not falling down, really. There's no sophomore slump, as it were. It's been all positive and on the up and up for him. So we love to see that. But we talked about before the show a bit the team you're most interested in here, really, and that's actually Complexity. Now, you seem to believe they're a good team, straight up. I'm going to let you present your case before I, well, do my thing and shit on American Counter Strike.
I think honestly, I remember their CS2 debut in well, it would have been Sydney. Watching them against Monte, not the strongest opposition, of course, but like it was pretty clear early on that JT had really done his homework on CS2, which he claimed he didn't, but like more than some for sure. Like I remember I saw one of the interviews earlier. He was like, "Oh, we've had about 2 days of practice on CS2," but then he was instantly like right out with crazy nade lineups, like smokes that completely like changed the outlook of the round, and that was from day one. Obviously, in Sydney, they went straight to the final, lost to FaZe. They've been competitive, beating a lot of very good teams on the way there. Same thing here in Blast. Beating Astralis, maybe not that surprising, considering where Astralis are at, especially considering they were a dead team. Wasn't it the day of their elimination they announced their two players? Well,
The very
anyway,
same day, yeah.
yeah. Competitive against Vitality. Like the top two teams of the event, they played 1-2 against each of them, and one of them was in a like main stage semifinal, and like that's pretty damn impressive, in my opinion, for a team like Complexity.
I think they're benefiting from two distinct things. Now, firstly, they picked the right time to sign one of the most studious and intelligent players that are remaining in the scene. Because if you've seen the breakdowns where Elige shows exactly the way he preps himself and the way he actually studies the game, it's not random. He's not a guy who's playing a bunch of demos, flicking through just round to round, seeing where he dies, going, oh, okay. No, he's actually doing his prep properly. So it's no surprise that this team, with him coming in, dictating the culture, has picked up CS2 really rapidly. I also think they're benefiting from the fact that they are a complete team with no intentions of making real changes in a scene full of just ghost rosters. Like, these are rosters that are either just freshly making signings, about to break up, about to lose their identity. And so it kind of feels like they are a de facto good team, simply because there is a massive vacuum behind one or two very good teams. And then eventually down the bottom, we've got a bunch of people still trying to understand what the hell they're supposed to be doing. Just running around like headless chickens. Really messy Counter-Strike being played. And they have their shit together. They're looking tight and they're looking cohesive.
They were the only team at the event who didn't have a debuting roster or a soon-to-be-changed roster. I mean, depending on how you count Cloud9, I don't think Cloud9 is going to stay this way. There's no way. So,
Boomich on the AWP, you don't believe? You don't believe in the Boomich?
Yeah. The thing of nightmares, Boomich up. Yeah, no. Obviously they do benefit from that, yes. But like at the same time as we have this great weakness, we also have Vitality coming out very strong immediately with Messi. And Extas also should be mentioned.
Yeah, that's one that kind of doesn't get mentioned enough, I think. They got Extas back in that sort of whirlwind of losses, and that's kind of a big W for them. Like, they really looked good under Extas before.
Yep. And then you also had FaZe coming off a historic LAN run. I think this is even with the defeat against Vitality, this is a top 10 win streak on LAN in terms of series. So you had two very strong competitors, and Cole were competitive against both of them. I think legitimately you could say that Cole are a good team right now. They are obviously also benefiting from other contenders who could have been better, or probably should have been better, just not being there because it's the end of the season. We have a lot of dead teams. We have a lot of restructuring. So, yeah.
You like them more than I do. Let's put it that way. You like them a lot more than I do.
Yeah, I like watching them. I think, yes, Elige is a big part of it. He hard carried this event pretty much in terms of the average, but I think huge players as well, like for the team in general. Floppy is pretty big. I think JT has stepped up. Like, I won't say he's like good, but he's like at the level where it's hard to say that he's a dead weight on the team, especially at least in this event. You know, he's doing his part. He's not like, yeah. The disparity isn't too big. You could have some complaints about Halzerk. I have some complaints about Halzerk. He is not perfect by any means. I think Halzerk shows flashes of being a very great opper, and I hope that with consistency and work in CS2, he can find that. But it's not just the Leech for me. I think Floppy has been big. Grim at times. I don't know. Maybe, yeah, Grim, I'm not the biggest fan of, but Floppy, Elige, JT mainly. That's my trio of like, they are doing great on this team.
Yeah, this event was inconsistent for Grim. Although, since they've put this roster together, he has generally been solid, I thought. I've not had that many, I think, disappointments from him. But overall, yeah, it has been a huge, huge return to form for Elige. This is something we kept hoping to see when he was still on Liquid. And we got the occasional map where people go, he's back, and he really wasn't. But coming to Complexity and getting to essentially be the big cheese again, dictate the way things are done, be the culture, I think is the best way to describe it, of the team. And realizing and taking that, I think, kind of into his own hands again, has been a big revitalizing factor for him. And the way that Floppy has flourished in this roster also is worthy of note, quite impressive. So, a lot to like, but overall, I do think once we see another month of other teams getting their stuff together, getting their act together, this roster will show its limitations and probably fall back down to their natural resting point, which, with these improvements, probably is more like 7th, 8th best in the world. The occasional top 8. The embarrassing last place finishes should be done, though. That's one thing I'll give them credit for. They should never be a last place contender again. They should be a realistic, fringe dark horse team somewhere at the bottom end of the top 8. But let's move on quickly. Let's talk about, I think, for me, the most interesting signing, and that's been ENCE picking up Glaive and Cuban. as their coach and Glaive as their IGL, considering who they lost Snappy, and they lost, obviously, their coach, who was impactful, but more importantly for me, Snappy, who's been the beating heart of this roster for... How long has he been on this project? 3 years? 4 years? It's been a long time, and he's built this team from nothing. He turned them into an actual competitive roster on a very limited budget, from what I understand. He's developed low-level players people have never heard of, into legitimate stars. I think this has been one of the most impressive runs as an IGL from him, and one of the most difficult pairs of shoes to fill in, possibly ever. And I love the move. Glaive is a player who had such a great legacy with Astralis, constructed that roster, allowed them to be... I think completed that roster is the better word. Not constructed, completed them. They were already very good, but they just needed that extra spark, and that's what he brought. So it's going to be great to see him on a new project, bring some fresh life into his own game, but also this team's game. Cuban, we'll see what comes of that. I have very little to really add to that sort of side of it. But I think, yeah, this is a great opportunity for Glaive. Quacke, you're the rosters, rumours, leaks guy. I'm sure you followed this with a keen eye. What is your take on this situation?
The original rumor that sort of came about was that ENCE would be picking up Nexa. I don't know if that was ever on the table. Maybe G2 just convinced him otherwise.
Oh wait, really?
Yeah, that was one of the rumors early on. It wasn't like one of the big ones, which might mean it's bullshit. Like it was maybe just like a Telegram, Twitter kind of thing. Regardless, I think Glaive, for me, more and more, I think that what matters more in Counter-Strike isn't the quality of your IGL and your coach separately, so to speak. It is the pairing. Like, what matters, Kerrigan. I could bring up some examples. Kerrigan, I think we can all agree Kerrigan is like at least the top 3 IGL of all time, maybe the best of all time. Like, Kerrigan is a very good IGL. I think we can all agree that Sonic is probably the best coach of all time. And yet the Sonic Kerrigan pairing did nothing. Never really did anything. Well, not much anyway, compared to where both of them have reached afterwards. Like, I think you can have an on paper worse IGL and a worse coach, and their pairing, is what makes them and their team great. So for Glaive, he kind of really dropped off after Sonic left. So I'm really curious to see how he will do on ENCE. The fact that Kuben got picked, I think Kuben being picked here is kind of odd, because Kuben left Apex maybe on his own to be replaced with Mither, who is alright, but like not great. Like, he left Apex, he did nothing for a while, and then now he's ENCE's replacement for Saw, or Saw's replacement on ENCE. So I wonder if that means that he's kind of like handpicked by Glaive, because Glaive feels I can work with Kuben, as opposed to trying to sign a coach from another team further down. But what I'm really curious about is why Saw is leaving in the first place, because from the outside looking in, he is coaching one of the most successful teams in the world for the past 18 months. He's head coaching that team. He could probably have his pick of coaching almost any team in the world, like aside from the big ones. I'm thinking like Neo coaching FaZe. He was made official just like a couple of days ago or weeks ago. There was probably a window for him to slide into there if he wanted to. Maybe, again, pairing thing. Maybe Kerrigan is more comfortable with Neo. Anyway, G2, Swanee, some would say that he's not a real coach, and they don't have a real coach anymore. Probably could have slid in there. I know a lot of people were saying Vitality should have pounced and picked up Snappy and Saw, rather than keep Apex or a lot of people, I heard some people say, rather than keep Apex and sign Xtas, they could have swept in and signed Snappy and Saw, who had their contracts running out. I don't know if that was ever on the table. Falcons maybe just got there first. Point being, Saw could probably have coached pretty much any team in the world right now, and instead he chooses to leave ENCE, and nobody has any idea where he's going. For all we know, he could be retiring. For all we know, he could be taking an assistant position in like Falcons. it's just really odd for me. I have no idea where Saw is going.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where he's had one coaching gig. He's coached on ENCE. So if maybe he just doesn't feel comfortable being in this team without Snappy, though. Maybe he wants to find another IGL he's just comfortable being around, that he likes. Or maybe he's only 31. He wants to lead again. Because he was, prior to being on ENCE, as a coach, he was a player. So perhaps he's just going to go off and look for another playing opportunity. Maybe he thinks he's got a Snappy-esque 3-year stint in him. And after watching an older player still play on the server whilst he's coaching him, he thinks maybe it's his turn. So there's a lot of options, I think, for Saw. I think there's just more questions as to how this roster looks with Glaive leading it. I think that's going to be the more interesting question. And it's going to be the more interesting development. The idea of picking Cuban, though, I think, considering his experience, it might just be that. He coached Virtus Pro for 4 years, maybe a little longer or a little shorter. I can't remember the exact timeline, but he was there for a long time, coaching them. It's likely that Glaive has gotten to know him behind the scenes through attending all these top lands, being a very well-respected figure in the Counter-Strike community. Yeah, there's a good chance they have a great connection. Just that we don't know about it, because we never saw them sign for the same roster. Perhaps it's a mutual respect thing. There's a lot that could have gone into that, so I want to see how they develop, because there is a lot of things that I've said in the past that are positive about Snappy's style, his system, the way he's used riflers who are talented but didn't ever quite have the right roles for them. He really found great spots for them, used them to elevate his rosters. So I think there's a lot to unpack about this roster in the coming months as we watch them play. Really interesting signing. Hopefully it still works out for ENCE, because I still want to root for them in the long term. Let's quickly, a topic we've talked about in the past that I think we need to bring to its logical conclusion now, is the Astralis roster got announced. We said it briefly in the show earlier that they got announced the day they got eliminated from the Blast4 finals.
Yep.
It's a bit of a shock. They've gone with not everyone's first choice of roster, and not the one anyone thought would actually come to be. So in comes Stown and Yabi, out goes Borup, as expected by most, and Buzz, to the surprise of many, keeping Stare in the lineup. Quacke, explain this to me. Why have they done this?
No idea. I think there was an interview that's been talked about a lot with Device, where Device said something along the lines of, I really like the core that we have right now of me, BlameF, and Buzz. I could see us going for another couple of years. It's going to be exciting. And everybody was like, well, this means Borup and Stare are getting cut, like 100%. Yeah. And, I wouldn't put it past an Astralis player lying in an interview, but he's either done that or they have gone against the wish of their biggest star, which is odd to me. But I think Astralis might just be becoming like the, friends club of Device and BlameF. Like, it's odd to me. It's a weird move, definitely. Yeah. I don't see the positions much at all.
No, the roles are a quagmire that not many want to enter. Like, who is playing what? Who's giving up space for who? Who's giving up positions for who in this situation?
I mean, it's going to be Stare. It's going to be Stare giving up space, of course. And between Stown and Yabi, I have no idea. I think Yabi is the kind of personality who would be like, he might not even accept taking space, like giving space to Stown or BlameF. Like, he might just straight up be, well, I'm one of the best lurkers in the world. I'm gonna keep lurking, or something like that. I'm assuming they would have worked this stuff out before.
You'd hope so, yeah.
Yeah, you'd hope so. Weird move, and I'm really curious to see the conclusion of this. If we ever get some more light into like what actually happened on Heroic. I don't even know if we know the full story yet.
If Stown tells us the truth
that
he promised us,
yeah,
in his ominous tweet that has never been followed up. I think since then he's received a little bit of Astralis PR training and has learned to shut the hell up when he shouldn't be talking. One thing that did just spring to mind, though, as I led you into that, asked you for your thoughts, Do you remember if Stair had a buyout to leave Sprout? Was he bought out of that team?
Yes.
Because it may just be a sunk cost fallacy at this point. If they're keeping him and cutting Buzz, perhaps they've just decided he's the guy we put money in, or the executives have decided he's the one we had to pay for. You can cut the rest.
Way, yeah.
We got to keep. You paid for him, now you got to play with him.
The way I remember this, Stair in the summer window was, he was not going to move until this winter window. Like, that was rumored at the start of June. By the end of June, he was unveiled as an Astralis player alongside Borup. Like, so I'm pretty sure he would have had a buyout, and like they wanted to sign him for free, but then, yeah, there was a buyout. There was definitely a buyout. I'm reading the article right now on HLTV, and it says at the start of June they had not agreed on the buyout amount, and then just a couple of weeks later he was an Astralis player. So yeah.
Okay, so maybe it is that. Maybe it's management saying, "Yeah, we paid for this toy. You got to play with it." The rest we inherited. This one you have to actually have to use. It could be as simple as that.
Yeah, but both Borup and Buzz are now on the bench, explicitly with no buyout. I remember Borup said, "I am now on the bench. I am free to search for opportunities," and wrote explicitly in his tweet, "I have no buyout." And I'm assuming Buzz has the same thing. Like, there's no reason he wouldn't have.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
they just assume they can't recoup their losses on any of them. They're going to keep the one they paid for. Or again, this is all speculation. It could be that this is the one this is the player who actually they decided would fit the best with their new vision for their team, because there's clearly got to be a change of idea behind this. Signing 2 clear staff sort of riflers, you've got to have an idea in your head of how this is going to work. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt for now. I think it's the best way to do it.
What positions does Stair even play? I'm not even sure.
Well, he was more on the pack side of things, if I'm not going crazy on Sprout. But he wasn't like giving himself up, he was more a trader, back of the pack type of player.
All right.
I wouldn't go so far as to say he was a closer, but he was definitely not the bitch entry, if you see what I mean, on the front end.
Because the spread of opening kill attempts on Astralis this fall season has been so weird.
It's flat 20s somehow. Like, it's so
weird.
Yeah.
Borup, Buzz, and Stair basically equal on trying the most. I don't know if it's map dependent, if they've been juggling it per map. I don't know. I haven't watched them that closely.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one to unfold, to watch unfold, because we've all speculated about this roster move for a long time. It's come through and it's been not what we expected. So they've clearly got some idea of how this is going to work. I think we'll give them time. We'll watch it once, and if it goes terribly, we will, of course, all rip it to shreds and tell them how stupid they are and how smart we are, being such a pleasant community.
Well, we're podcasters. We have a mandate as content creators. Yeah.
You have to be right and assholes about it. But yeah, let's move on to the fixture of this podcast. Prospect of the week. It's been a packed week with a lot of LAN play, which has been really interesting. If you're following prospects, getting to see them on LAN. Some of them you've never seen before on LAN. Some of them it's the first time in a long time, because they don't get that many opportunities. Let's start with yourself, Quacke. You've picked a really interesting player who we kind of, I think, touched on when we previewed a team last week. Who was it?
Wicadia. I remember Wicadia from when the WePlay Academy League was in full swing. And I remember when Eternal Fire unveiled their academy, and he was part of it. And, honestly, for me, this was just like a throwaway. They built an academy team so they could be in the Academy League, and the publicity that came from that, because the Academy League was pretty good. And it was like, none of these players are ever going to be remotely notable. This guy was, apparently. He got his shot. I still think he was just temporary to start with. He was just here. I can't remember who he replaced. Let me actually double check that just real quick.
The roundabout of players they had is it's interesting.
Yeah, they benched Xfloud for this guy. Xflood. He's been great. And I keep seeing on Twitter every week and every month that he is at the top of the FPL standings, which means little, but he's out there. He's You know, he likes people apparently kind of like to play with him since he keeps playing in FPL. He's buddies with the guys with Centaurus, presumably. And he's putting up great numbers on a team with actually very great players. This past week, which has been Jönköping mostly, he is second best of his team. Centaurus obviously top. But you know, he's beating out Calix and Woxic, who are great players in their own right. So impressive for an 18-year-old.
Yeah, massive. This is, I want to say it's his debut LAN. I may be wrong on that front because I'm not sure if he played any of the We Play Academy LANs, but I'm pretty sure this is his first LAN with Eternal Fire.
No, fourth.
Fourth? Oh wow, I've missed some low-level stuff.
He was there in EPL and he was there in Perry Please. EPL they made quarters, so like, is this guy even a prospect anymore? Yeah.
Yeah, well he is. He's 18, playing on a tier 2 team, so he has to.
Yeah.
But no, okay. More importantly,
second in Perry Please as well. Yeah.
More importantly, yeah, the carousel that was the Eternal Fire roster, because it wasn't just they were cycling fifths, they were cycling the idea of their roster all the time. They were bringing in Major and Paz, then cutting Major and Paz. They were bringing in Xcloud and cutting Xcloud. Emor was leading, then Emor was AWPing, then Emor was back to leading, and then Woxic came in and Emor was entering. It was all over the shop. And I think ultimately, I'm going to throw out pure speculation here, but I think it's actually probably reflective of something that we don't think about too much or talk about too much when we talk about our Counter-Strike analysis. I think Quacke just has the right intangibles to have been on a stable roster. Because notice how since they've made that final move, now they've had all their actual results. They've settled their roster down. And he's been taking a lot of really tough fights. That's the best way to put it, because he's not necessarily all his spots are difficult. It's just a hard thing to do to go out and take like 26, 27% of rounds just opening attempts on T side. Brute forcing things, being the guy who has to like essentially die for the cause. And he's been that guy. And I think a lot of that has to be the fact that they initially signed him and stuck with him, and now he's showing these sorts of results, because he wasn't initially putting up great numbers. I think it's just a testament to his character and as well to his communication. If he's calming clearly, staying calm, and being like really willing to do this job, that probably is a massive, massive thing for the team. Other players would get quiet, they'd get in their own heads, they'd get tilted. He's likely just been able to stick with it, stick it through, and they've been able to figure things out on the back end, and now they're reaping the rewards. He's playing really well. He's taking these tough fights and winning them, actually showing off that talent that got him into the academy in the first place. And now Eternal Fire are looking solid at events. I think it's a shame they didn't go and win this one. I mean, sure, Monte played pretty well. They're Monte, for crying out loud. And we'll get into that a little more later. But I think it's a huge, huge achievement for himself and for the team to have brought him in, stuck with him, and finally see some benefits. This has been an amazing event for them. Or run of events, really. As we seem to be forgetting, this isn't just a one-off. Yeah, and the other prospect of the week played at the same event, didn't have quite the same success, and is in a very different situation. But that's ENCE, a player from MIBR. And I've got to say, this guy is annoyingly talented. Because when he first got signed by MIBR, he came out of nowhere. A lot of MIBR signings are like this. You know, if you don't follow the Brazilian scene way down, you're just going to see a guy come in with a crazy name and go, okay, and then he may be gone in 2 weeks, or he may become their new star. Brunel was kind of like that. ENCE is like that now. He is incredibly skilled. He plays positions in such a intuitive way. That's the best way I had to describe it. When you're watching like his CT side demos on like Anubis mid, he used to play it. I'm not sure he still plays that position. I wasn't able to actually catch that many of their games at this event. In the couple I did, there was no Anubis played. But he's playing like Anubis mid, and he's essentially just instinctively moving between the angles, between the choke point like sections, because you know it's kind of split in two, and just always looking in the right spot. And if someone appears on the other side of his screen, bang, gone, dead, hits them anyway. So he is obnoxiously talented and a really intuitive player. At this event, he looked really good again. Now, MIBR didn't go all the way. They did end up getting eliminated by Eternal Fire, which is funny. So we saw our two players match up because we picked them before this actually ever went down. So we were watching them butt heads. And all in all, he didn't have the greatest tournament individually, statistically. I just thought this was a great time to talk about him and just kind of what to expect, because on a team with Brunel, or BR4Nzan, as some of you may know him, it's quite hard for him to be a leader in like opening kills, but he is naturally more aggressive as a player. You'll often see them just either dominate the game as a duo or see the team really struggle if players like Safe are not really performing on their cleanup duties, I guess you could call them. But it's a very, very interesting dynamic between those two. Highly explosive, incredibly skilled. Like, the ceiling is way up there with these players. It's just a question of finding them the right, I guess, leadership and molding to make them into actually developed, finished players. But yeah, crazy talent, amazing intuition for the game, and one to follow. Quacke, I've just ranted for way too long. Please interrupt me.
I didn't have much to say about ENCE. I just remember his debut in Katowice this year, even. I thought it was last year, but it's this year.
Time.
That's how much of a mainstay he already is.
Yeah, time doesn't fly.
Yeah. He was good. He was really good. He only played 6 maps, but he put up like good ass numbers, despite not making the main event narrowly, very narrowly. I can't remember who they lost to, but I think it was in the final game. Yes, it was against Fnatic. Fnatic beat them with Mezzi. So
he's legit.
He is legit. Nah, I rate him. I rate him. I can't say much more than that. He's a very good player. He's definitely one to watch. If MIBR get to keep him, MIBR being weird this year, with regard to who they sign, but I think they've hit on a pretty good roster with ENCE and Safe. Brenzan also a good player in his own right. Drop, I think, doing pretty much what he did on Furia, fulfilling his duty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not had too much of a crazy time on MBR statistically, but I know from the Furia days he does a job, right?
Yeah, he does his job, as does Exit. I think Exit is like pretty consistently good for the tier that MIBR are at. So I like this. Yeah, one to watch for sure. And it doesn't look like Furia are making any more changes, so ENCE is probably safe for now.
Yeah, Furia have settled into their new iteration of their roster, I guess. You remove invites and this team becomes nothing, I swear. Like, they're frustrating me so much.
Such a shame. I am 100% convinced at this point, when KSerado was wanted by Liquid and he said no because he wants to win with Furia for
whatever reason.
This was the point KSerado turned into Xantares, like a great player who will do nothing.
Hey, he's got one big advantage. You stick Turkey and Brazil, and you'd see Xantares at a lot more big lands, like, through the qualifiers, through that stuff. Because KSerado does. I said you remove invites, this team is nothing. No, they'd still have the easiest qualifiers to get to big events. It's just they'd still do nothing with it,
and they'd still lose to Pain. So,
or back in the day, complexity in an open qualifier. Why not?
Yeah,
there's been a lot of that historically.
But at this point, Furia would lose to EG. So
yeah, let's not
nouns.
Let's wrap up our shit talk of Furia, and let's actually talk about that big event that these players we just profiled played at. And that's Jonkoping, the Challenger series, which is I just made me realize that it's DreamHack winter time. Like, I always forget when it happens. It's at the end of November usually. Look, let's be honest. I used to attend DreamHack Winter, and back then I used to know when it was. But ever since I stopped, and it stopped being a mainstay of the CS calendar in such a big way, who cares, right? It's tough to sometimes to watch it. But this event was actually fairly loaded with interesting teams. And we saw a crazy run from Monte, right? That was... We know they're good. We know they're real. They're not a fake top 10 team in this current climate. They're one of the realistically 10 best teams we have playing consistently. But man, usually this is not the win condition. Like, SDY is the rock, the heart, the bastion at the middle of the team who just constantly does his job and does good. But we don't expect him to carry an event. What the hell was that all about? Monte usually have a win con that's pretty clear and obvious. It's War 2K miracles and Demka consistency. Those are the core, like, I guess, meat and potatoes of their culinary victories. I don't know how else to put it. It's not SDY popping the fuck off. And yet he did. He put up crazy numbers. In the grand final, was winning clutches. The most important game for them, though, was against Virtus Pro. And yeah, I put it in our notes. If SDY does not exist, Virtus Pro win this event. Because holy crap, did he drag that team to a victory. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, SDY is a great player. Caveat that has to be mentioned, they made playoffs through 2 best of ones against non-European teams. The only 2 non-Europe... actually, sorry, MIBR are not European. But they did.
Still.
Then they beat VP, which is genuinely impressive. And it was through a huge SDYW. Like, SDY performs at his average there, and it's a VP 2-0. Like, no questions asked. Yeah. He got an MVP. I didn't even realize this event gave out an MVP. SDY now has an MVP award on HLTV. That's his first MVP. I didn't even know. Wow. Grand final, obviously. Eternal Fire actually bringing it close. Double digits on both maps. Overtime. Double overtime. Sorry, 1 overtime. Double overtime. On one of them.
Double. It's confusing now, but yeah, that's double now.
Yeah, granted, SDY wasn't the difference maker in the final. The only game he wasn't the difference maker. Yeah. Great player. Yeah.
Go for it.
Great player. He did great. Group stage, maybe, a bit too easy. Like, I wonder what happens if you throw... I wouldn't say Gamer Legion. Gamer Legion didn't do very well, but like, I wonder what happens if you throw MIBR in there.
Well, more importantly, what happens if they actually have to face Eternal Fire in the groups?
Yeah.
So Eternal Fire lose that opening BO1 against Nouns. That kind of throws a wrench in the works. That's the one little asterisk. But thankfully, they earned this win because they did have to then go and play Virtus Pro. That just legitimizes everything. If they'd gone to the semis and played MIBR, at that point you're like, I mean, cool. Nice. But it's not quite the same level of victory, is it?
Yeah, no. Very good performance from SDY. And Monte as a whole. Monte are impressing me. I genuinely thought that this was just a mix. Like, still just a mix with a salary. Yeah. I was 99% they would... Out of Into the Breach, Gamer Legion, and Monte, I wouldn't... Monte is the last one I would expect to actually carry on their Paris level-ish.
But they
did. So, I'm very impressed.
I actually think Into the Breach was the biggest overperformance of those teams, but I did think, more importantly, that Monte would fall apart. Just the roster would disseminate, right? It wouldn't last.
With the rumors that these players have, War 2K, attitudinal issues. Fesser, there's rumors about the same thing. Boros, strong rumors about the same thing. Joel,
and he then goes and leaves.
Yeah, Joel. All of these guys have like rumors and like the way their personalities are assessed in the community that say this team should not sustain their composition over a best of 3, much less a year. Like but for some reason, I don't know if maybe it's LMBT working magic. I don't know. Somehow they are just it's pretty crazy to see. Yeah, they're finding a way for sure.
Yeah, I thought the roster disappears after they lose Boros. I think everyone else was just going to follow slowly one by one, but instead, no. They made an okay signing. They didn't exactly replace Boros' impact, but they just found other ways to win with other players.
Oh, yeah. Up. Maybe even more impressive, they had a hard carry who left. His replacement has been the worst player on the team so far since joining, and they are still winning.
Yep.
I don't know how they do it.
It's it's War 2K. It's War 2K. Much of it's been put on his shoulders, to be honest. He's making so many things happen.
I know, but I mean, Bro replacing Boros has actually turned out to be the worst out of the possible outcomes that could come out of such a transfer, and it's still working wonders.
Yeah. It's amazing. Great for them. Great run. and hopefully we'll see them in another big event. Challenge some other big teams. It's a shame that we don't see them so often at things like Blast because of the politics of everything and the bribery required. But let's talk about our final topic, which is a roster move or a roster that should be announced today, as promised.
I was told it would be.
Yeah, so we should be hearing this roster by now, but we haven't. So let's talk about it. It's Fnatic. What we pretty much know so far, we're pretty sure Body will be involved. And Crims is staying on the team, right?
Yes.
That's it.
As far as we know,
pretty much.
Well, Afro is staying. I think.
Afro.
No.
Sorry, always forget.
I forget him all the time. Yeah.
But yeah, we've got 3 players, one of which isn't official yet, and then we have 2 players who everyone has been rumored to be. Everyone's been rumored to be the last 2 players, but nothing seems concrete. What is the latest on this?
The latest is that Body, about 2 hours ago at this point, tweeted from we have Espoo coming up. Fnatic are attending Espoo.
Yeah.
They are the reigning champions. They were the last to be invited, and they were announced as invited after Messi left. So I'm pretty sure they will have a nearly or completely complete roster when attending this event. They are there right now. Body tweeted the contract signed GIF from Helsinki 2 hours ago. He's been strongly rumored to Fnatic for a month, or have 2 weeks at least. ITB tweeted something about Body leaving as their stand-in, where they mentioned he had a contract with the new team. There's a million billion reasons to believe Body is going to be here. He is going to be here. As for the final 2, we have had quite the list of rumors, but to name a few, originally it was Hampus and Brollan. Hampus was debunked pretty quickly, at least in Swedish circles. Brollan never really kind of faded. The next rumor was Brollan and Isak. This was at the point where Dexter was still on the team, but the next rumor was Brollan and Isak. Pretty sure Isak is also not happening. Brollan, just nobody mentions him anymore. Then it was Mattis who would be coming in. Huge role clash with Brollan. Supposedly a buyout north of $100,000. So was he coming in? I don't know. We will see. And then Body was rumored and now pretty much confirmed. There's a couple other names being floated. Just today, German CS leaks said Kyubi has flown to Helsinki to act as Fnatic's stand-in and potentially new player. But I'm gonna assume that means more they are trying him out for Espoo and then might sign him. Which is weird. It's sad for us Swedes who, genuinely, Fnatic may never get as good a chance as right now to sign a good full Swedish 5. Which is a shame that they didn't even sign, probably, if rumors are to believe, they didn't even sign Swedish core. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's a list of rumors that has had me mostly meh about the whole thing. If we assume that core of Body, Crims, Afro, then plus Brollan, I'm if everything's working perfectly amongst these guys, we've got an okay team. And if that's the most excited I'm getting, I'm very disappointed. And when you throw players out here like Isak, who I just can't for the life of me get behind as a signing, it's rough. QB would pique my interest if he was made full-time. Assuming it's correct that he's going to be standing in and trialing, if he becomes full-time, I would be very into that. QB's been on my list of players to watch for a long time. He's actually a player I've been started to collect demos for and really get in-depth on. He's a really good player. But he's 18, and so there's not much promise in terms of concrete, physical, finished product, even in that version of the roster. So we're looking at another mishmash, mediocre roster of almost theirs and maybe once was. And what is this chemistry going to be as? And Brollan speaking English, it's all.
He's fine in English.
Annoying.
I think the English thing with Brollan is being overplayed at this moment because he supposedly left Fnatic because he didn't want to speak English. Then he still spent a year speaking English, and while he didn't perform the best,
Well, he played
Yeah,
like
you know.
us, yeah.
Well, yeah, if he had a legit language issue, that hasn't been mentioned a single time. Like, not a single time has anyone mentioned. When S-Tag was having issues learning Swedish, that was talked about in every single interview. It was like, well, S-Tag is still struggling to learn Swedish, so we are having some miscommunications. Now it's like, you know, Brolin spent a year on NIP speaking English, and there was no problem. So I think that's overplayed at this point.
Yeah, there was no problem other than him playing bad, but we can attribute that to other stuff if we want to.
It is positions. It's all positions, which is why I think Fnatic would have been a pretty good move for him. Like, especially when Roy got benched first, I was like, this means Brolin is signed. Like, it has to.
Be.
Like, it must be. Like, yeah. But I want to ask you. Dexter's not benched. Dexter was playing very passive positions. He was playing very Isak-esque positions, which is why I feel like that is a transfer that at least positions-wise could have worked. Will Kyubi work being the least prioritized player on the team?
In terms of
because QB, Body won't be. Body will be the Messi replacement. I'm pretty sure.
QB is a T-side closer. Not too. It's interesting the way we have to talk about modern T-side roles. He's not lurking particularly often. He's mostly back of the packing from the demos I've watched, and really he plays super well in these scenarios. But he's not going to be particularly aggressive. He's not going to need a lot of setup in terms of the openings, and he's going to be more likely to be throwing util, doing that kind of job on the early round. CT side though, he can play a bit of an anchor. I do like him more as a rotate. Like, kind of take him wherever you need him to go, stuff in, fill in, have some impact. I like him in a more active role on the CT side. That is not to say that he can't anchor or do it well, because a player who has to pick his angles, in a late round, tends to do fine picking his angles when getting executed on. Like, generally the two link fairly well. So I'm not too... Yeah, I don't think there's going to be too much of an issue for his roles. I think it's more a question of his composure, his maturity, how he reacts to when things don't go well, considering it's his first big team. A lot remains to be seen, but I do like the things I've watched. Everything I can see and can say about him is pretty positive. Like, there's no doubting the talent. If he gets his preferred positions, there's no doubting if he's comfortable, and if he's not feeling the pressure, he will frag out. We just have to watch him on a proper team, because we haven't really seen him even playing a particularly structured roster for a little while now. So a lot of question marks there, but role-wise, it should be an okay fit.
All right. Then that might work. Because, Brolin or Mattis or secret third thing will be the Roy replacement. Body fits pretty well as a Messi replacement, I feel like. You've got Crims as your, like, pack lurk-ish kind of supportive player / anchor. And then you needed someone a bit harder to kind of fill what we would call bitch positions that Dexter was occupying. Body probably calling this team could work. I kind of like it. I would have preferred... Ideally, I would have had Crims, Hampus, Brolin, Knock, and Isak, probably. That's my ideal 5. But Hampus is not happening. Knock is not happening. Knock is definitely not happening. Isak is apparently not happening, probably. And at that point, you're better off being English speaking. And even then, I feel like, Brolin and Body, I'm down. QB, now it's starting to feel like OG, man. It's starting to feel like you are just putting together a roster of pretty much random players picked out of a hat, because they're the only ones you could afford.
That has been... Honestly, following these rumors, a lot of the time I do feel like they have been trying to out-mid OG. Like, no, we can be more aggressively 17th in the world. No, screw you. We are 17th. Like, really, guys? This is what we're warring over now? Like, finishing last in every big event group stage? That's what you want to be? Like, that's just not that promising. But hopefully they commit to something that... Wow, I keep saying hopefully they commit to something that's good, and I'm like, I've seen what the rumors are. There's nothing they can commit to that will have me excited. None of this particularly thrills me.
What if we look, just for a second, look outside the rumors? is there anyone better they could sign? I think Body is probably one of the best signings they could have made. Body is a good player. He's played well. Post G2 has played really well in Tier 2. Falcons, he did well, very well.
He's been a very competent Tier 2 player who has been aggressively Tier 2 though.
Well, yeah, but like, you know, if he's ever going to get a second shot, this is the time to put him on Fnatic. I feel like. But with that said, is there anyone else who isn't Brollan, Mattis, Isak, QB who you would want to put into this team that is like realistically available to Fnatic? Like you can't put fucking nerds in this team.
I can't just replace everyone with other players. I can't just cut Afro and sign Dexter or stupid stuff.
Well, no, you could. You could, but like if we are, you could, but you wouldn't. Like I don't think Dexter is realistically available for Fnatic, because if he was, for one reason or another, they either don't want him or he doesn't want them at this point.
I don't know. I think Brollan is a big risk still. If in a world where I believed it would happen, I don't think it can happen, but I would have preferred to see Matthews on this roster because I know what I'm getting. Oh, sorry. I think this. Wow, this roster leaves a bitter taste. I don't think there's much you can do considering the core that you're stuck with and the lack of money you're working with. There's not really much you can do that's better. I wish teams like this would. I wish teams like this would just commit to a bunch of 18-year-olds. Just sign a young team and leave them be for like 18 months. Because that's so complicated. Like, go sign QB. He was a good idea. Go sign, I don't know, Owner out of Bait or something. Go sign Soulfly, all these random young players. Instead of signing like, oh, this guy's old and mid, this guy's okay in Tier 2. Like, just sign some kids and give them a good coach. Like, I don't get why we always have to go and recycle the same 25-year-olds.
It's a weird play that OG and Fnatic have been doing recently, which is literally just, you know, at this point it's like a trickle down. Like Tier 1 player falls off, they move to Fnatic. When they fall off on Fnatic, they move to OG. I am like 99.9 based on zero rumors, I am 99.999% sure OG are going to sign Dexter. Like, that is going to happen.
There's something like Players Union. Like, once you played in one Tier 1 team, you get to just slowly trickle down and keep your salary for a bit.
Yes, this is Ronald Reagan's trickle down economics in 2023. Counter-Strike.
Yeah, but it's the viewer getting pissed on. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap it up there. We're at 50 minutes, which is long for an episode of this show.
And
a
lot has happened.
Yeah, there's a lot to catch up on. It was one hell of a week, so hopefully we can have this out pronto-ish before the day is out.
Before Fnatic unveil their actual roster.
Yeah, before they reveal whatever mess they've gone with. And before my worst nightmare comes to life. But alright. I've been KingT, Quacke, as always. Thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure having you on the show. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Goodbye.